Alright. So let's just wait. Is this... I think that's more level. Right, I'll just share it from here. Right, let me just put this up here. That over there. Alright. Just stretch this out. That's what I'm talking about. Alright. Let me just see, where am I? Oh, there it is. Let me just share this. Almost done. Alright. Inna alhamdulillah wa kafah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-Mustafa wa ala ibadi alladhina irtada wa man bihudahum ihtada wa bi athari ahli al-Madinah iqtafa wa ba'd. Fassalamu Allahi ala al-qawm. Ahlan wa sahlan bikum wa marhaban. Hwan Layth, bakhair ragle, khush amadid, people, and swagatam, swagatam. Alright, so what is going on? ¿Qué tal, mi gente? What's going on, people? What is going on? Today, a bit later than usual. I was getting back from somewhere, so got delayed. Chalo hota hai, chalta hai yaar. It happens. Right, that's it. That's how. And as it said in Urdu, मैं देर करता नहीं, देर हो जाती है. I never delay anything. It's just that delay occurs. It's almost, you know, it's nothing to do with me. Hi. Lolito, ¿qué tal? Muy bien, hermano. What's going on? What's going on? Salam from Midwest, Riyadh. You're doing it. Yep, we have time. عندنا الوقت وعندهم الساعة. I think in some ways, according to my time flow, I was just created for a different era. I'm going to have to challenge this whole Einstein time-space theory thing. Nafiz, ahlan wa sahlan. The prophets, yep. Did you see Yasir Qadhi saying that yajuj and majuj are zombies? Salam from Oz, ahlan wa sahlan. Are you going live on YouTube today? I'm not on YouTube, just on Facebook, people, because by the time I got back, and I've got to set it up on here then, and it's just going to be a stretch. Trying to set it up, and this phone, the battery's low on it, so I think I'd have to wire it all up, and I'm a bit late to do that today. No hay problema. It's no big deal. It's going to be on YouTube tomorrow anyway, but cool. So, people, what is going on? What is going on? Zombies! Imam Hassan is in the house, people. Imam Hassan. You're doing it, Imam. Tehran. Guys, whilst people are still tuning in, and the rest of you are very faithfully clicking like and share. Not. You're like, hell no. Hell no. I ain't gonna share that. Fitan and fasad. Damn. Had this protein bar and it seems to have got stuck in my in my throat. Right, so oh, guys, an awesome achievement on a personal level. That's for me, that is. That I finished just yesterday this book. I mean, it looks like some kind of sacred text. You can't quite see it from there. Right, so what was that? It's an... But it's... I mean, it's a great book. Comes with pictures. Comes with a colouring in section. No, it doesn't. But incredibly eloquent. Wow. Honestly, I'm just so mesmerised by Tim Mackintosh Smith. Rather, by his eloquence. Honestly, the guy is he's so eloquent. I cannot believe it, seriously. I went through the Audible version, but because I got so into it. What I'll do is I'm just going to share a few words on this book, give a little personal review. So, get ready. Buckle down, people, whilst others are tuning in. Right, so this book, Arabs, a 3,000-year history of peoples, tribes, and empires. And it's authored by Tim Mackintosh Smith. This book, the title could not have been made more boring if he tried. But as it said, people, don't judge a book by its cover. Although this is decorated, however it is, but it sounds so goddamn boring. The title does. You know, Arabs, a 3,000-year history. Who wants to learn about goddamn 3,000 years of... Because this is what the attitude is going to be. You know, going back to the earliest documented Jindabu, coming right up to the modern day Middle Eastern crisis, the Gulf crisis, MBS, everything that's going on in the Arab world. Who wants to... 3,000 years of a history. It's like, nah, mate. It's like somebody, when I shared this yesterday, they said to me, they looked at it and they commented, I can't disclose who. They said, Mufti, you must have one dead sex life. If that's what you're reading. I was like, oh, rather. One chooses to differ. You know, this book, I'm telling you, when I got into this book, right, I was so mesmerized by the whole thing that I then purchased the hardback. I got on Kindle. I got the Kindle version. So as I would go through it, because it's incredibly lengthy, as you can see, it flows very well. I mean, most of it I went through on Audible. What I would do is sometimes when I was incredibly fascinated by a particular point, I would also, when you open up the Kindle app, it will automatically take you, if you've got Audible and Kindle on the same phone, it will take you to where you are and it kind of cross-references with each other. So what I would do is occasionally, when I wanted to check up what was that, what did they say, take a screenshot, maybe share it with someone, have a little discussion on it. So I would just go to the Kindle app and just highlight the notes there, screenshot it, take photographs, discuss it in my little groups. Things like this. So, but it flows so incredibly well. It's not a boring book, honestly, by any standard. And it's so much more than history. History is inevitably being taught. That is inevitable. But the book carries certain motifs, certain kind of themes that, this whole identity thing, what does it mean to be an Arab? This elusive term. And the author explores that in the beginning, and who is an Arab? How is anybody actually an Arab? If we're linking it to the Arab, the nomadic culture, or is it to the tongue? And people are Arabs because they are Arabophones, they speak Arabic. But then the irony, or the intriguing irony, is that nobody ever, or hardly ever, truly speaks the High Arabic. Nobody does today, and did they in the past is equally questionable. So he looks into the settlement of the Arabs, how the Arabs became settled, the diverse kingdoms, the conflicts, the development of the language. What did it mean to speak High Arabic? And his theory of how High Arabic developed, because most likely Arabic Fusha, clear Arabic, developed perhaps about 2-3 centuries before the Prophet's lifetime. It's not actually that old before the Prophet. So when it emerges initially, his understanding is that the Arabs, if that's what we want to call them, the Arab people, because you had the southern Arabian kingdoms, the Aksumite kingdoms, which is perhaps modern day Yemen and places like this, where you had the kingdoms of Himyar and Saba, the ancient, the Sheba kingdoms, and the Marib Dam civilization, one of the greatest dams actually in recent modern history, in fact in human history, that has stood for so long. So what is this? And that is referred to in the Quran as well. So this whole thing of, he looks at these civilizations, the differences they would have had in languages, but in a very exciting way. You see, this sounds dull, this sounds boring when I'm saying it, but in such an exciting way he ties these kind of themes together, develops them, that how it must have been that people initially, the way you have this speaking in tongues concept, that this is where High Arabic began, this kind of speaking in like tongues, like they're not actually, making maybe they're making some sense, but they're using these words. And there's a lot of rhyming in the words, a lot of kind of rhythm. And from here you get the sha'ir, the development of the sha'ir. Now the sha'ir is not what we think of today as a sha'ir. A sha'ir today is a poet. Simply a poet. Like, I'll sit down, I haven't got any books here, but whether it's Ghalib, Mir Taqi Mir, Dagh Dehlavi, John Ailia, these poets of Urdu, for example, these are poets. This is not what the term sha'ir was in when Arabic was evolving. So the sha'ir seems to be someone who, he's not a preacher, but he's somebody like a kahin. So you have the kahin, who is this soothsayer, this kind of person who speaks in tongues and he does all these things. And the sha'ir, he travels with that. He goes to different places. He kind of does this, and hence words are rhyming with each other. And he adds these themes to it, and he enters a trance-like state, a bit like a shaman today. So hence, in early Islam, when they were saying to the Prophet that he's a sha'ir, this is the culture they were kind of relating to. They weren't speaking like today, a poet, oh, he's a poet. They meant like a shaman. And how this sha'ir aids then in the spread of this language called Fusha, or High Arabic. And then how this language kind of continues to go on, the script, because the script we have today is a Nabatean Arabic script. It's not actually the ancient Arabian script. So it was most likely, it becomes embraced in Hijaz during the lifetime of the Prophet, and then Islam aids in the spreading of this script that we have today. It's the Nabatean Arabic script. Because once the Quran gets written in it, then it's on nitro boost. I mean, that becomes the currency. It's what kind of flows. So But there's this, and all these struggles, the politics, as he starts to question things. He speaks about, in this book, characters that went through certain things pre-Islam, after Islam. He questions things like, why did the Prophet, I mean, it's understandable that the Prophet gained the support of people, but the Arab were a formidable people. They were a very wild, free-spirited people. It's understandable that they would, maybe even give allegiance. It's understandable. But why would they agree to pay taxes to the Prophet? You see, this was very counter, not only productive, intuitive, to the Arab people, the status, the free spirit. So why would these people not only back the Prophet, but they would decide to pay him taxes, which was an insult in the language of the Arab. So it's very interesting how he explores that. He has his theories that perhaps, I mean, it's very interesting to look into it. It's very, obviously, to sum it up into just a few bullet points would really rob the book of its status. But he looks at all the geopolitical things going on and how they may have played a factor in this. How he feels that Islam, one of the things that incredibly aided Islam and increasingly promoted it or mobilized it, was the fact that it had slogans. This is an interesting observation by the historian on things like how Islam had slogans like Allahu Akbar, which is still continued to be used today as a slogan. How La ilaha illallah is a slogan, as well as obviously it's a profession of faith, but it's a slogan. And how people, it is, you see, when you rally a people, you rally them with slogans. And it's interesting how he explores these things of the mindset of different people, different civilizations, how Islam, when it does settle after the Prophet, the problems, the kingdoms, the Bani Umayyah, the Abbasids, the politics, oh wow, and then right through to the age of, the peak, the age of knowledge and wisdom, and the age of Ma'mun and the early Abbasids, and then the kind of stagnation, and then the decline and everything. I mean, I was just so seriously enamored by this whole thing. I have to give it absolutely top marks. It is for me the second most powerful book I've ever covered in the English language. That's for me, because it covers so much more than history, politics, psychology, philosophy, everything, and so eloquent. But that could be, you see, people said to me that, look, Mufti, so you definitely recommend we get it. I don't know, because as a true, if I'm to be objective, because look, it's not like I'm going to benefit. It's not like I'm on commission, so if you buy the book I get anything, or if you get it on Audible. So a true statement from me is that, look, I don't know. I don't know if it's for you. That's the question. Because, you see, this book came to me with almost divinely, like at a divinely appointed time. It came to me. It came to me at a time when I was researching Islam origin theories. I was looking at the arguments of Islam revisionists like Patricia Crone and other people, and I was going through, Fred Donner and all these other guys, their works. I was questioning a lot of what is Islam history, how did Islam begin, what is the Sharia, and I was going through a whole very, a deep, at an introspective level, internal level, I was going through a very deep, turbulent kind of phase. So, from, this is maybe late last year, early this year, on trying to understand these things and enhance my understanding, I've got this lens trying to maybe clear the lens to see more accurately, precisely what is in front of me. Now, this came to me at a time when I was going through that. And I came across it, to be honest, I wasn't that intrigued because the title's boring as hell. But I read a review on Audible, and the person said, well, I'm so amazed that this is so well written, I can't, and, you know, don't be kind of misled or something like this. And I thought, well, what the hell, I'll give it a go. And it brought for me not all, but so many of the answers. And there was a whole search, obviously. I was reading other works and I'm researching, I was discussing with certain people, and this contributed significantly. To me, this was a godsend. And then the fact that it was written so eloquently, and especially when you're listening to it, and I do like to listen, so I will, you know, I prefer things like Audible and going through audiobooks, and it's got an excellent narrator. So to me it was brilliant, and like I said, it really just kind of shook my whole world from my understanding perspective. But it may not do that for you. You know, if I've read this book 5 years ago, it would have probably meant very little to me. But at this stage in life, it's maqam par. You know, once we reach this maqam, it's, you know, it's invaluable. So that's my, you know, top marks for it, people. And if you're into that, you may love it. If you're not into it, don't say, you know, oh, Mufti, what the hell? Yeah, wasting our money and our Audible credits. So that's that. What book are you discussing? I'm discussing the book Arabs, a 3,000-year history of peoples, tribes and empires. Like I said, boring as hell. Title, book, wow. Book is just too goddamn good. I did say if it was up to me, I would make it mandatory. I would make it compulsory in every Islamic studies curriculum. If it were up to me. That's, so people who want to study Islam, it's a must. Perhaps at some stage for them. At a slightly advanced stage. Alright, so what is going on, people? What is going on? Kabina. You had, alright, Imam Chaudhry Waleed was in the house. Ahlan wa sahlan. Qazi, doing it, people. An Imam from Cape Hill, Birmingham. Or Birmingham, as I've been, as it ought to be pronounced. Right, mandatory like Sahih Bukhari. Please discuss Yasir Qadhi's belief. You see, I'm quite confused. Let's speak about Yasir Qadhi. Alright. What? This one? What is going on? You know, this one. So, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi ji. I don't know, is it me? I'm confused in understanding what Sheikh Yasir Qadhi is trying to do. It appeared to me, this is what my reading of what Sheikh Yasir Qadhi had written, was that he was trying to to step back from this literal interpretation of yajuj and majuj, and he was going into entertaining the metaphor aspect, or not even a metaphor, a symbolic aspect of, like he mentions that Sheikh Abdul Rahman Sa'di in his Risala discusses how the Ya'juj and Ma'juj are not they're not these kind of like monster-like species, that they are just, he refers to as, which I'm actually inclined to as well, that it was the colonial powers, just that the stage that the world went through during the colonial age was an absolute paradigm shift for the world. Things were never the same again. And that's why I'm inclined to that it was what Sheikh Sa'di said. And I felt that Sheikh Yasir Qadhi was kind of going that way in something he'd written on social media saying, look, well, what's the big deal? The sheikh of my sheikh, Sa'di, has also said it was a metaphor and stuff like this. But then in some things he seemed to be as though he's not saying it. And then he's got this video clip where he's saying, somebody saying that and he's trying to put all the caveats in place as a safeguarding, so you don't come back at him. But he's saying, could they be zombies? Yajuj and majuj. The zombie apocalypse, people. The zombie apocalypse is upon us. The end is nigh. Right, so that would be hilarious if there were zombies. And then we gotta kind of just outrun them. Or you just gotta trip over the person next to you and then outrun that person. The Walking Dead. Yajuj. Right, so that would be hilarious. How do we kill zombies again? Do we have to what? We've got to blow their head off. Is that the not in any metaphorical sense there, you sickos. Totally. Right, so we gotta all carry these shotguns now. So how does this work? I gotta kind of polish up on my zombie apocalypse survival guide kit. Right, so use the cross. Zombies don't care about the cross. Yeah, man. Well, that person, you know what? Who just said that to me? That's frowdy frubbery. People, have him in your group, so you know the zombies are going to eat him for sure. So you've got a little head start, because he's there with this crucifix, and the zombies thinking, I thought we're mentally slow, but this guy... They're like, what is this? Equal opportunities. Right. Right, so what? So somebody said Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog. It says in the Quran that they will come out after Imam Mahdi. Imam's gonna have Mendi all over. Mendi is henna in Arabic, so it's like he's gonna wear Mendi. When we were kids, this is what we used to think, that people used to call him Imam Mendi. So we used to say, Imam Mendi. Yaar ye kaisa imam hai yaar? What's this Imam? What's this about? What's going on over here? Imam Mendi. The guy's going to be an Imam of Mendi, of Henna. So, as it turns out, it's not Mendi, people. It's Mahdi, the rightly guided, okay? So you've got the rightly guided Imam. And so that's what it's meant to be. Obviously, the Messiah. I mean, I don't obviously believe that there's going to be a Mahdi, and there isn't a single Sahih Hadith predicting the Mahdi. But obviously, people can disagree. It's no hay problema. You don't have to believe what I believe, of course, right? So, but there were other scholars as well, people like Ibn Khaldun and other people who hundreds of years ago said, look, there's no such thing as this Imam Mahdi, and it's just hadith that have been really... There isn't a single sarih sahih hadith to do with the Mahdi. And this is a tradition that has crept into mainstream Islam through Shia Islam. And the Sunnis have just kind of gobbled it up. And they've just completely made it a part of the... And I think it's an amazing case study, because it goes to show how things can creep in and become mainstream. So from a science... if you want to say scientific or an observational perspective, it's fascinating as a case study. Right, so what is going on, people? What is going on? So with the Imam Yasir, Sheikh Yasir Qadhi, I don't know what his clear stance is. You see, the problem is they can't speak their mind. This is the problem. I'm telling you, guys, people, they absolutely bottle it. They do not have the cojones. They don't have what it takes to speak the truth. No, they don't, let me rephrase that. They don't have what it takes to speak their mind. So they will present a version of the accepted truth. So people will say, look, because most people accept something, they will accept it. Then they will just kind of tantalize. Oh, maybe, perhaps it's a metaphor. Abbe yaar, seedha bol. Say it straight. Just say, look, I don't accept this as a literal thing. Come on, guys, it doesn't make any sense. Speak your mind. Kahe ko darte ho, baba? Why? You know, this is the thing. People are too afraid because they will lose their backing, they will lose their crowds, they will become blacklisted, they will become badnaam. Oof! Papi dunya. Papi sansar. You know, this zalim dunya, yaar. Badnaam. Oof. Badnaam, for those of you that don't know, means, it's an Urdu term which means to have such a bad reputation, blacklisted. So, being badnaam, people are so, as the poet says, Abhi to suraj bhi nahi dala, kuch sham to hone do. That yet the sun has not even gone down. Let it be evening first. That he's addressing about himself. Abhi to suraj bhi nahi dala, kuch sham to hone do. और मुझे बदनाम करने के बहाने ढूंढते हो, मैं खुद ही हो जाऊंगा बदनाम, कुछ नाम तो होने दो. He says that you're finding all these reasons, these plots to make me have a bad reputation. He says, I'll do it myself. मैं खुद ही बदनाम हो जाऊंगा. कुछ नाम तो होने दो. Let me at least first build a reputation. Alright, so what else is going on, people? What is bothering mi gente? So this is why I always advise everybody that, look, if you can, those of you that can, study the deen for yourselves. Those of you that can't, don't let other people this is for all, don't let people bully you into beliefs. Right, so that's not how this deen ever worked. That's not how it's meant to work either. Let's take some questions, people. I've had quite a few questions come through. I did make what I tried to do is jot some of them down. and Zahra's just taken my little notepad and filled it up with God knows what. So, right, so here's a question. Become a mufti. Somebody had asked, how do I become a mufti? Oh, Billy is in the house. All right, doing it, Billy, doing it. Cody. Partners in crime, people. Right, so there you go. Now, Billy's a great person, very hard-working people. So now, if you ever need anybody that can help you move house and move the products from your house, things like this. Sorry, not products. Furniture. Billy is your guy. Okay, he's a man with a van, and don't be racist. Don't assume that he's gonna run off with the thing. He's very hardworking. He's a great guy. If you are, wherever you are, if you're in the UK, people do, and you need ever a hand, you need a man with a van, Billy is your man. All right, cool, Billy. In case he just takes your furniture and just drives off somewhere else. He's like, I thought you said take it. That's what I was doing. I was taking it. Right, so nah, he's a very hardworking, amazing brother. There you go, fully vouched for. Right, so let's take some questions. So some people had asked, right? So some people had asked, right? So how does one become a mufti? Hey, rather, how does one become a mufti? Well, this aren't long story, you know, this one. Right, so right now, look, becoming a mufti, what do I advise? First of all, this ain't for everyone. People are still going on about Billy. Come on. All right, focus. Right, so, look, being a mufti, this ain't for everyone. It is a very uphill struggle, okay? It is, however, if you are somebody who's interested in learning about the deen, and having, not just learning, in having a very, an in-depth, advanced level understanding of the deen, then it is an amazing task or objective or achievement if you've done it. It is unquestionably perhaps the greatest thing I've ever achieved in my life, I feel. Right, so that's unquestionably. In addition to a few other dodgy deals, a few county court judgments, and a few convictions. I'm joking. Right, so I feel that it really is, it's one of the, to me as an individual, it is the most amazing thing I've ever achieved in my life. It's really made me who I am today, if I can say that. So I absolutely love it to bits. If somebody said to me, I'll give you £1 million, but they were to completely strip this mufti thing off, as in eradicate that mufti knowledge from me, and there's many things I would do quite easily for £1 million. And a lot less, evidently, from the games that we play, apparently. Billy knows about them. Okay, what's the least amount you'd do? These hypotheticals. Toba. They corrupt people, they corrupt my innocent mind, you know. So, anyway, I wouldn't, honestly, the world, I wouldn't give it up for that, because it means that much to me. It's made me who I am. It is an integral part of my essence today. So, you know, I would definitely, if somebody asked me, I'd like to become a mufti, would you advise me? I would say, look, first of all, it's not for everyone, because there's going to be a continuum of study and learning. Study doesn't have to mean like nerd-like study, like you become a nerd. It just means you have to have an interest. You have to, right, somebody said, shame on you with these acts. Yahya, talk. talk in Urdu in and of itself can be understood in a rather naughty way. Naughty. And who said anything about acts? You see, looks like brother talk. Talk. And the other guy's like, is that an imperative? I'm okay. He's like, no, I was just introducing myself. I was saying, Assalamu alaikum, brother. Talk. And the guy's like, talk? Kya matlab? Talk do? Anyway, so right, so coming back to this, focus, people, focus. Right, so the issue is that, look, there's going to be a continuum of learning. Let me put it as learning, because when you say studying, it's too dull and boring and nerdy and stuff like this. But learning, so there's going to be like a continuum, a lifelong. That the first stage will easily be anything between 6 years at least to maybe 8, something like that, between that. So there is a certain amount of commitment. You know, you have to learn the Arabic language, you have to go through the basic sciences of Islam. That will include all the, you know, whether it's going to be the language, the Arabic language and its grammar and those things, the morphology, and you'll learn that. You'll have the books, whether it's fiqh, how to practice Islam, pray, do things, go hajj, marry, divorce, inheritance, the penal justice code, everything, transactions, from a beginner's level to an intermediate to an advanced. So you're learning the rulings according to a school of thought, then the differences of opinion, your evidences, their evidences, then arguments and in-depth learning. You're going to learn usul, which is legal theory. Why do people allegedly make the rulings they do? What does that school say? What does this school say? What are the underlying differences in principles? You're going to cover that. What are some of the universal kind of, almost a bit like a constitution, a bit like that. Not a full-on constitution, but like that. Why is it different? So you're going to learn that, once again, from a foundation to intermediate to advanced level. You're going to learn Islamic history, creed, what are beliefs, creed. It's a very theological kind of thing. The Ash'ari school, the different schools, the differences of opinion, tafsir of the Quran, going through the entire tafsir, learning that. Then usul hadith, what is the science of studying the chains of hadith, the gradations, grading hadith, the different books. You're going to cover that. Mustalah is called usul hadith or mustalah al-hadith. You will then cover the actual books of hadith, like read Bukhari, hopefully from cover to cover, Sahih Muslim cover to cover. You'll cover the main 6 books, Abu Dawood, Tirmidhi, Nasa'i, Ibn Majah. You'll cover the Muwatta of Imam Malik, maybe 1-2 other books. These kind of things, you're covering them. You're learning, you're going through all of this stuff. Adab, literature, you'll learn a bit of literature, a bit of poetry, a bit of, prose, things like that. You're going through all of that, and then you can specialize in ifta, in fatwa, where you just read intricate rulings, you read about case studies, and you know what are the principles of fatwa. And so this whole thing, it is quite immersive. It's quite, it will be intense at some point. The best method to do it is obviously going to be like full-time in a madrasa, probably. You can do part-time. Some madrasas offer part-time courses. If you're slightly, more matured now with age and you don't feel that, obviously you can't just pack up and go and study. You could maybe do a part-time course. Even places in the UK offer things. I'm not too clued up with all the different colleges, what they're offering. I know that within Birmingham, we've got a madrasa. There's many madrasas, but we've got Hasanat College, which I think they might call it City Hasanat College, CHC, but it's in it's close to Alum Rock. It's in that part of Brum, and I know they've got a part-time course which is free. So you go part-time. There's people like Sheikh Yasin teaching there, Sheikh Amjad, very, good-headed kind of scholars and people, you know, with sense on them. You know, they know what they're talking about. So these are some things, and you could obviously, you'll have to mishmash. You'll have to kind of maybe study up to a certain level, then do other things. But you have to remember, and this is really important. I want to give this. No, this part is. Somebody said, "Are you joking?" No, this is true. I mean, there's many other madrasas. There is a Sufa in Brum as well, in Birmingham. You've got other places, but these are just two that I'm familiar with. Now, you have to remember something, and this is important, that these places of study, unfortunately, will always have an institutionalization about them, some more than others. You know, in the world of institutionalization, some places are more institutionalized than others, as an axiom. So people won't allow you to be very free-spirited. They won't allow you to have free thought. If you question a lot of things, in some places like the City Hasanat College, to be fair, they as long as you're respectful, I think they're okay. Because some of my friends and students, like Shaban, Asim, some of these guys very close to me, you see them in a lot of photos. You see me in a lot of photos with them. Now, these guys have finished their studies there. I know they engaged a lot in dialogue, had a lot of respectful debates, ain't the right word, but a dialogue during their studies, and the teachers were fine with it. You know, people like Sheikh Yasin was very calm, secure. You know, you don't feel insecure, don't feel threatened. But there are other places where people will get very upset in madrasas. You know, when you question them, they want to, you know, they'll expel you. That problem solved. So, you know, there's some madrasas where somebody, he had short back and sides, and they, you know, like as a haircut, and he was, I think, in his final year, and they expelled him. Final year, what the hell? You know, so this is the kind of nonsensical, you know, the kind of bureaucracy that you're going to have to be against, okay, if you're going through a madrasa. And it's until you haven't finished and you don't become yourself, you won't be able to speak your mind. I mean, maybe amongst friends you will, but if you speak it too much in front of people, I don't know, it might be, you know, it's hit or miss. It's maybe some places might tolerate you, other places. These institutions are not free-thinking institutions. They become very insecure usually. You know, there's a few places where people have got chucked out over silly things. You know, like they trim their beard and they just expel them. Despite this is like the 6th year going, they chucked the guy out. What the hell? You know, short back and that's a joke, and it's not even a funny one. So I think, look, these things, I don't know what's being offered in depth by Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad in Cambridge. He has a course. I don't know if he'll accept beginners, but if he will, I think his place would be awesome. Because he obviously is going to be very, you know, very kind of professional, and he's not going to really care about these kind of sectarian debates and stuff. Likewise, people like Sheikh Akram Nadwi, very, you know, very kind of compassionate in their understanding, and I'm not sure, I know he has an online course, I don't know whether he has another kind of study set up. But if you do want to become a mufti or a scholar, it is, to me, I would say it's one of the best things, if it's for you. But remember, the struggle there, you will, in addition to having to work hard or learn stuff, the best way to learn stuff is just to enjoy it. Honestly, me, I just try to enjoy it. I would actually, as boring as this is going to sound now, I would find these debates that I would read about in the book so exciting. I'd be like, whoa, Imam Malik said what? Whoa, Ozai said what? Whoa. So I would, you see, the more interesting you find it, the easier it is to remember and to commit to memory. and teach it to people. Talk about it. You know, like when you're with like-minded friends, you can talk about it. You can say, oh, well, you know, I read this interesting thing. What do you think about this? And that way you will commit it to memory. So I used to do a lot of that. I used to always discuss things with people. And that would help me memorize these kind of rulings and things like that. And also because I enjoyed them. So that's but remember, you will be against the institution. As in, there is a institutionalized, bureaucratic kind of resilience to free thought, to critical thought, that you will have to keep kind of battling against until you reach the top of the hill. So, but once you're at the top of the hill, Badshah ho Badshah, you know, it's then you wear the crown. Then you're like, you know what? Acha, correcting me. Oh, may I say that hadith that you quoted happens to be weak. You know when you can pull that card on people. Oof. Power, boss, power. You know, I was on this group, right? I'm on this group, and I think I mentioned this once before, and it's they just tackle things like Islamophobia and stuff like this, and they've got me on there for ages. I just as a passive, you know, I just listen to updates about things going on, how they're tackling things in the media, how they're doing all these kind of stuff, and it's good to, you know, it's good to be up to date, to know what's going on. Now, this one time they got into a little debate or something, discussion, and they said this about, and I think I mentioned this before, and I'll come back to the debate in just a moment, but there was a point where the person, he said, I've got proof for this. And I said, acha, debate, you want to debate, acha. I said, acha, hatu burhanak, bring your proof then. So he brings this hadith, and I said to him, by the way, you know, where you pull rank and you say, well, you know, just so you know that I specialize in hadith. Since you claim to have a hadith, bring the hadith. And then he posted this thing, and then I said, nah, bring the sanad. Bring the chain. And then as soon as he brought it, I said, Mawdu, fabricated. Oh, power, right? So the thing is that so it does have its perks, people. It has its perks, but I mean, I just mentioned that as a, you know, the discussion that day that they got into on the group. It's actually an important discussion, to be fair. It's to do with things like, it's to do with this thing of marriages and registration processes. And there were a few people on there who were like imams, and they said, look, I feel that no masjid should conduct a nikah unless the people will register it as a civil marriage. So this is what they said. So I had opposed. Don't judge me, yaar. Don't judge me. Let me finish. So I had opposed the motion. I'd said, well, I strongly disagree. I believe in people's freedoms. Yeah. Educate people, and then people make their own choice. I said, you can't force people to register marriage. You can't force people to do anything. Force is wrong, categorically. So they said, well, what do you mean like this and this and this and this and this? I said, look, look, a nikah and a civil marriage are two separate things. Now, that's fine. If people want to register, they can. But to say that to do one, you must have, it's by force, you must have the other. Who gave you the authority to impose anything on anybody? So they said to me, so what are you advising? I said, I'm not advising anything. I'm saying let people are not kids. You know, you don't need to infantilize people. They are adults. They can make their own decisions. And they said, well, you know, oh, this leaves a lot of people. I said, look, you can say let's educate. You can say let's create an awareness. But I said it's not true. Why should I support? I said that, look, why should I support an authoritarian government kind of initiative to register things with the government? Why should I support that? Like, once a person, I would say people have their own choice. Once a person registers a marriage with the government, to leave that marriage will take you 1.5 years at least to leave. Let's say something didn't work, and I'm speaking to people all the time, their relationship doesn't work out. Now, these people have to go through a civil process of 1.5 to 2 years before they can call it quits. Who would want to do that? Why? Who are you to impose that on people? The British public does not do that. Most of the British public is not registered as married. So why should we be imposing it on Muslims? So the thing is, give people education, tell them what it is, and then let them choose. If some people may say, yeah, you know what, that's for me. I'm going to do that. Right, so other people can say, you know what, that's not for me. I don't like that kind of stuff. I don't like, you know, it's not to do with... And people say, well, look, people say that, oh, well, this doesn't then protect the woman's rights. Look, people, I'm all up for women's rights. Like all men, or like most all straight men, I too love women. Look, I'm always supporting women's rights. I'm supporting freedoms. I'm supporting things like this. But look, let's be honest, yeah. Let's not use false words. Let's not use false words. Let's be very honest. Like somebody phoned me and asked me a question about this. And they said to me, this is going a few weeks ago. And they said, look, you know, my husband's divorced me. I said, okay. They said, I want to know what my rights are. I said, I don't understand. They said, no, I want to know what rights does Islam give me. I said, I don't know what that means. What do you mean by right? So she said, you know, like rights? I said, well, like, okay, you have the right to freedom of speech. You have the right to freedom of movement. You have the right... So she said, no, duh, I know all of that. What rights does it give me here when I've been divorced? You have the right to remarry. Like, what do you mean? Like, I said, look, can we use Occam's razor and simplify? Can you use the real term of what you're trying to say and I can answer it? Are you just asking me how much money will you get? So she said, no. I said, okay, what are you asking then? She said, well, yeah, well, that as well. I said, अच्छा फिर मुद्दा पे आओ ना, अब बात करते हैं. We'll speak like, but let's speak खुल के बात करें. Let's speak clearly, because it doesn't sound nice when you say it like that. This is not nice because it sounds cruel, but it's the truth. The truth is that, look, you want to know, okay, how much money do I get? Okay, we've broken up. How much money do I get? Now, the question is that, look, I'm not saying you're not entitled to certain monies, and I'm not saying that. But this is what the question is. This is simply what the question is. How much money do I get out of this? And I do feel that if I'm going to be, legit, I do feel that that personally, that obviously, when it comes to separations, women, I do agree, even though I don't know whether some women agree with this, but I feel that women are better caregivers when it comes to children. They do take better care of them. And I feel that women should always have that prerogative, and they should take care of the children unless they're deemed a threat, which is different. And things like that are fine, but when it comes to and supporting the child, I feel the father always has a right and an obligation to support the child. But that said, I do feel that the system is kind of heavily leaning against men, right? And it is kind of unfair. So you will see things like, so for example, there will be cases when I speak to many people, they're not allowed to see their kids at all. They have like a 5-year ban that you can't see your kid. There's no criminality involved. It's just because let's say the wife has said, "Oh, I'm afraid." So if he sees the kids, he might get the address through the kids. So I don't want any contact. So they will place a kind of block for like, let's say, up to 5 years. But the father will still have to pay. Now that's unfair. Like, it is heavily unfair. Things like this. So I feel that the system is heavily kind of crippled against men in general. Saying things like, look, when a person marries, that automatically a woman is entitled to half of what you own. I think it's ridiculous. And I'll be honest with you, I think that that's one of the most stupidest things that one could assume. But yes, I can understand if you generated something together over a long period of time, that both of you have the right of ownership to that. But to say by simply getting into like a kind of agreement with someone, you own, oh, by the way, can I come stay over at your house? And, oh yeah, shall we just sign here? Oh, by the way, this is half my house now. Yeah. Let me tell you something. Seriously, check this out. Now, somebody said to me, a lady said to me that, oh, but if that's the case, what do I get? I think she'd been married maybe 2 years or something, divorcing. She said, well, what does Islam give me? And I said, this was a different case. And I said, look, what does that mean once again? Do you mean money? How much money do you get out of it? Is that what you mean? Because people don't like it when it's very abrupt, because that sounds very unpolished. And so, they said, well, okay, what money do I get? I said, well, none, and said, well, it's not really fair. And I said, well, with all due respect, it's an egalitarian society, get a job. Like work. Like if you want things, work for them. Like if you don't want them, then. But you see, like, I don't get how everything is equal and then at the same time unequal. Now check this out. This is not a lie. I had somebody speak to me. I'm not making this up. And look, I am 100% with in supporting women in their rights. 100%. If a woman, for example, let's say she was working, she was doing things, but she, she had a child. Now she's taking care of the child. She's at home. Now that's understandable, and that does make sense in what's going on. But like there was a case. Check this out. This person said to me. This lady said, "Look, I want to." She said, "I'm unhappy with my husband, and I want to leave him." So I said, "Okay, all right." And she said, "Well," I said, out of curiosity, what are the issues? So she said, well, the issues are that I want a better car, I want a Mercedes, I want a semi-detached house. I don't want to live in a regular tourist house. I don't want to have a regular phone. I want the latest iPhone. I don't want to have this. I want to have this. And wallahi, this is what she said. Like for about 60 seconds, she just ran a list. Like, I don't want this, I want this, I want to be driving in an Audi or a BMW or a Mercedes, I don't want a regular car, I don't want this, I don't want... And I was on the phone thinking, huh? I'm sorry, is this some kind of genie hotline? Where, like, your wish is... So I was like, okay. I was like, and what's your husband got to say about this? She goes, well, he's not doing it. He's not buying me these things. I said, if you don't mind me asking, do you work? And she said, yes, I do. I said, well, more power to you. I said, well, do you mind me asking, what do you work as? So she worked as some kind of something like a kind of like a teaching assistant or something like that, like an assistant. I was like, cha cha cha. Madame, should I change the Audi to a Rolls Royce? I was like, cha cha cha, Mia Yusuf. I bet. You know, what the hell? I was like, look, I was saying that, look, I said to her, look, what's your money is your money. Buy what you want. But obviously, if your relationship ain't working out, that's fine. You know, somebody could say, look, I just don't get on with this person anymore. You know, we've just drifted apart. That makes perfect sense. You know, you should not be forced to be in a relationship. You cannot be forced to be in a relationship against your will. You could be unhappy. You could be, you know, like, and these things are, you're absolutely right. If that's, you know, if you're living very unhappily, then taking a step to gaining closure is good. But if you're going to discuss with people and ask advice and say, well, look, and this is your list of problems. It's only really, you know, this was the only problem. It wasn't, she said, well, these are my only problems. Like, I want a flash car. I want, you know, semi-detached property. I want this, I want this, I want this. She goes, oh, my mum said I'm just being, or I don't know whether it was a mum or whoever, they said I'm just being too materialistic. And I'm not entitled to an Islamic divorce. I said, look, the entitlement thing isn't, if you feel trapped in a relationship, it's your prerogative. But, you know, maybe your mother has some wisdom. Seriously, you know, it's, and so my point is that, look, I feel that we, you know, we've got to, we're moving in a day and age where people want to impose a lot of things on other people. And we've got to let there be freedoms, you know, let people be free, let people mutually choose things. I think things like this, if they are important to someone, like, let's say, coming back to the divorce thing, they want things registered because they want a property, then I think, look, they can make these things clear in the beginning of a relationship, that, look, I would like this to be done like this, or I would like this, and they could kind of set it up like that. But I just feel that, you know, these things, it's unfortunate because these things ruin they taint the fabric of the relationship. So, yeah. Right, so let's take some other questions, people. What's going on? Here was, speaking on relationships, there was a question that had come through. Can I hug my friends? But there's a catch. This one got catch, you know, this one got catch. Can I hug my friends who, this is a guy asking the question, who are but they're not his girlfriends, but they're his friends who are girls. यार हमें कहाँ से मिलते हैं ऐसे girl friends? Where do we find such friends who are female? He's like, can I hug my like to the guys he's like, yes, Assalamu alaikum, salam. Okay, get in there. Oh. Every 2 minutes he's like, oh, you again, get in there. You naughty. Looking for a fatwa. Let me get this right. You want me to give you the fatwa, so I get blacklisted, I get badnaam, or tumhe maze mile, and you get to chill with all your friends, friend. Are yaar, I want to know, how have you been friend zoned by so many so many girls have friend zoned this bechara? I think we should make like a collective dua to kind of like, Ya Allah, get him out of the zone. Allahumma akhrijhu min hadha zone. Al-zalim, al-muhish. Ya Allah. So this bechara is still stuck in the zone. I think you've got bigger issues to worry about. So let's take the next question. Right now. Oh, here's an interesting question, going back to earlier on in the book that I was speaking about. Why was the Prophet called a Sabian? That's an interesting point. And because we're not too sure today who the Sabians exactly were. There were, generally, my understanding, you see, there's a difference of opinion. Some people feel that they were to do with, you know, like a kind of a Hanifi, by Hanifi I mean a free-spirited kind of religiosity to God. But it wasn't institutionalized. It wasn't that they weren't part of any kind of religion like that. They were kind of just like wanderers that just believed in a supreme being, and they just did good things and meditated. A bit like how you'll maybe describe a like a mystic today, but a mystic today, I suppose it has a lot of the that kind of connotation of mysticism, but it's basically somebody upon a non-institutionalized way of faith, of religion, and they just did their own thing, just had set of good morals. A bit like saying today a humanist except with the God element. So if you had somebody like that, so that seems to be the understanding, that there were a group of people that were like that, maybe down in southern Arabia first and then in other parts of Arabia. And when the Prophet began Islam, began preaching, that he was associated with those people. So they said to him, because it is true, a lot of in the Meccan period, they didn't used to refer to them as Muslims, they would refer to them as Sabians. As in the non-Muslims would refer to Muslims as Sabians. And this term Muslims, I don't even think Muslims referred to themselves as Muslims till much after anyway. I think Fred Donner does have a point that Muslims, early Muslims, referred to themselves as mu'min, believers. And they didn't, this Islam, Islamization of Islam is a later development. I do think so. Not that it's so much of a big deal. I don't think it massively changes anything. It's just a nuance changes, that's all. But so early Muslims, they won't call themselves, like the Sahaba wouldn't have most likely identified as we are Muslims. They would have probably said we are mu'mineen. And it wasn't this kind of, and they wouldn't generally, I don't think they referred to the deen as the deen, like Islam, as like they've recognized, because Islam means submission, so they did recognize that. And by the way, there was a tradition before Islam that also used the term Islam. He does cover it in the book as well. But I don't think, they obviously knew the term Islam, and it's not that they would never have ever used it in their lives. But I don't think they generally, the way we today will say, oh, I believe in Islam, it's a religion, we are Muslim. This kind of setup was a later setup. They had it a bit more natural. So they most likely didn't refer to the deen as Islam, probably just as, you know, they probably generally didn't have a lot of structuralization to the deen. It was still natural and organic. Right, the title of that book is Arabs, a 3,000-Year History. So, yeah, so that's my understanding, that's what I think they were referring to the Prophet as. There is another understanding that they were referring to him as the Sabians, as the Zoroastrians were referred to as Sabians. I'm not, generally they were referred to as Majus. It does appear in the Quran as well. the term majuj. Now, this is what the Zoroastrians were generally referred to as. Some people said there was another prophet that had a book, and they were called, had scripture, and they were called the Sabians. But we don't seem to know. This seems to be a lost part of our history. The term does come in the Quran, where Allah speaks of it positively, the Sabians. But once again, we are not too sure today what they actually were. That's, we're kind of all, it's guesswork. It's guesswork. Somebody said, what about the hadith of Ali that mut'a is haram? How did we go from Sabians to mut'a? This is, well, we'll come to that. That's always a fun topic, isn't it? But let's just cover this first. So that's the Sabians, okay? But I do find that very interesting. The whole, you see, people feel that in the time of Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Islam seems to undergo a renovation, and I think there's some truth to that. I think there is some truth to that. Maybe I don't. You see, I don't put it down to necessarily sinister reasons, though. A lot of the Islam revisionists, they will put this down to sinister reasons, like they will say Islam was made up by Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, that he made everything up. I think that's very difficult to believe. Even some of the other revisionists, like even Fred Donner and other people, said, look, that's very unlikely, because for the amount of effort that it would have been required, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan to construct this figure, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because they said like he made him up. This was what some people felt, and he made up the entire Islam. For one caliph to have pulled that off, it was, it's easier that, because if you're looking at this from an anthropological perspective, just as an anthropologist, you're gonna go for the easiest option, like the most likely, the most doable human option. It's easier for the Prophet to have existed than for Abdul Malik to have pulled this off as an entire stunt. Like, that's much more incredible and unlikely for one person to have pulled off such a concoction of Islamic history, culture, Quran, legacy, religion, passion, everything. It's very, very unlikely, because Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, although he was a great, he was a great charismatic person, and he was obviously had great initiative and was in his own right, a very powerful leader. But the level of charm and charisma and power and influence you'd need to pull off a stunt like that, it's easier and much more believable that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam actually existed. Do you understand? So that's from a historian perspective. That said, today historians have actually uncovered several Byzantine and other writers who were in the time of the Prophet who actually mention the Prophet, maybe a year or two after him passing away, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where they mention him as Muhammad or Mahmud, and they speak about him, this man from Arabia who has a religion. And they obviously generally they don't praise him, they don't believe in the Prophet, but they say this person, and some of them describe him as, he has a band of like kind of nomads who are raiders and things like this. But they do speak of him, and this is it's categorical proof that he existed. So yeah, so I mean, I've slightly digressed there. Yeah, so my point was that people feel that because Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, the oldest coins you have in Islam go back to him. So where it says, like, he's inscripted La ilaha illallah, things like this. The Dome of the Rock was built by him. That's actually an interesting question, why he built the Dome of the Rock. It doesn't make as much sense, actually. I think it may have been to rival a kind of holy ground, but it doesn't actually make much sense. The Dome of the Rock, the masjid, you know, the actual the golden dome mosque that you have today in Jerusalem. This was built by Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, and some of the oldest inscriptions of the Quran you have still there that are in some of the ambulatory, some of the walkways, internal walkways. They actually date back to his time, some of them. Now, a lot of it has been renewed over the ages, but there are some old inscriptions that have been archaeologically kind of checked and dated. So this is why they feel everything goes back to, a lot of things go back to him. He's also one of the he in his time mandated that people take up Arabic as the official lingua franca, because even in the early Sahaba time, the Muslims may have been writing in Arabic on their own, but the main records they kept in other places were in their languages. So they would have kept the Greek records in Greek. They would have kept the Persian ones in Persian. Things weren't Arabicized. And a lot of Muslims used to use the Greek, the Byzantine kind of scribes to do the writing. And it's in Abdul Malik ibn Marwan's time that he passes the edict to say that, right, everything's going to be in Arabic. And it creates a bit of a storm. But by doing so, he actually propels the Arabic language to magnitudes that were unforeseeable before. So, I mean, it is amazing. And one of the stories has it that he... this is one of the stories that they say that the scribe that they used to have, the person who would do the documents, he was a Byzantine... a lot of them were monks sometimes, because they could read and write, Christian monks. But this Christian, they say that he actually urinated. He needed to take a leak, and he couldn't be bothered, so he urinated in the ink pot. It's like target. It's like target engaged. That's gotta be. I mean, unless it's a massive ink pot, because as most men know, it doesn't matter how good you think your target is. The command, the chain of command, just does not follow. It's like okay, target engaged, and then it's that way. You're like, huh? You're like, yeah, what's going on here? Why can't you follow a simple chain of command? I'm looking over there, aim over there. What's this like? What kind of cluster bombs are you dropping? So this this scribe, what he did was he urinated in the ink pot. This is what the myth has it. And this news reached Abdul Malik, and he said that, what the hell, you know, is this what they're doing? And we're using them to write our kind of holy stuff as well, or other stuff as well, which has, names of God in there or things like this. And so he said, enough, I'm not going to use them, we're going to use our own people and our own script. So the myth has it, Allahu A'lam, whatever it was, but Abdul Malik definitely, he is a huge kind of an epicenter for where things just drastically change. So, yeah, now with him, they do feel that this term Islam is brought more to the forefront in his lifetime. It may be that he kind of brought that more to the forefront. These things, once again, they don't really impact us as Muslims. Like, we shouldn't become insecure. It's not it's not a big deal like that. It's a nuanced change, but it's nothing. It doesn't mean, oh my God, Islam is fake. It doesn't mean anything like that. It's just saying that, look, obviously all things would take a slight institutionalization process along the ages. Right, so let's move on. Right, so what is going on? Right, before I forget, people, Imran Khan. Allah. those of you that have missed it, Imran Khan did a groundbreaking, electrifying, breathtaking speech at the United Nations General Assembly. Now, amongst the the leaders of the world, and it was a very powerful speech. So I think he did an amazing job. He really highlighted the Kashmir issue. He highlighted it very firmly. He made his case. He stood his ground, and it's really, I think it's, I don't know whether people will do anything that it's just hot air or not, as people are saying, but I think he did an amazing job, and he said very clearly that, look, I'm telling the world that if these people, continue to be aggressors or do what they do, he said that, and it's amazing because Imran Khan is who he is, and he's standing in front of world leaders, and he said, look, we believe in La ilaha illallah. That's what he said, that there is only one God. And he said that, if push comes to shove, we will fight till the death. And you think, whoa, that is a speech coming from, a prime minister. And he said that, and when two nations who are nuclear strong go head to head in a war, he said that's not just bad news for them. That's bad news for the whole world. Okay. Because should anything go, and he said to them, look, he said, this is not a threat. He said, this is a warning. This is a warning he goes, this is a warning. This is why I'm here to say, let not this happen. Let's do something about this. And it's amazing. I thought it was, he said it very firmly. And he's a person who warrants respect. I don't think any person in Pakistan could warrant the kind of respect that Imran Khan warrants. Honestly, I think so. He's such a cool guy. Honestly, I gotta say, I think he's amazing. It's the charisma, the charm, the good looks, even at this age. I mean, God, he must be what, mid-60s, late 60s to look like that. Bloody hell. And the courage to speak his mind, the confidence, and that world acceptance already because of him being a famous cricketer. So I think may Allah grant ease to those who are suffering, and may there be a solution, to this whole India, Pakistan and Kashmir conflict. Because it is the heaviest fortified border perhaps on earth, the line of control between these two nations. It is one of the only, I believe it is the only border that can be seen from outer space because the floodlights that they put on the LOC. And these countries are nuclear strong, and they have a lot of erratic kind of people in the countries on both sides. Seriously, people that would just say, seriously, they have people like this. And it's, I was speaking to somebody and he said, Imran Khan's just all about speech. And I said, well, what would you want him to do? He said, just go to war. I said, but war is never a solution. He said, look, just do it and just drop a nuclear bomb. This was a person telling. I said, are you mad? A nuclear bomb. I said that they would equally nuke Pakistan. And it's not just about nuking each other. The radiation this would trigger in the world. That, these countries have like over 100 nuclear bombs each. One of their nuclear bombs is so much more powerful than the hydrogen bomb of Nagasaki and things like that. It's so much more powerful. I said, and he said, well, it's the end of end of times anyway. And I thought, and this was like a person who's not a religious hothead. And I just thought, wow, like I said, look, don't be crazy, man. But there's people like this, and there's people in India that are, like even in this Sacred Games Part 2, the whole season about the person wanting to trigger a nuclear kind of thing and just kill off most people and then start a new civilization, a new, that this is Kalyug, the end of times in Hindu mythology. And so you have like these hotheads on both sides that, It's crazy, man. It's crazy, and so we need like cool-minded people to think. So I mean, inshallah, may there be some some solution. I really hope. Ameen. Right, cool. But I just wanted to say I was really proud of his speech. I thought it was amazing. So, Imran Khan, Zindabad. Right, so what are the question? Right, okay. Now, let's there's a question here that I was asked. On the right, do you think Imran Khan may one day get assassinated due to his narrative? I sure hope not, man. He's the only person who's brought some some sense to that part of the world. Right, now, why do some Muslims rug burn their forehead in prayer? You see some people and they've got like a whole, like a camouflage. They've got like a whole, I don't know, like a SWAT team operation going on their forehead. And you're like, what the hell has happened to your forehead? Did you, not even sandpaper, did you get one of those grinding machines and just, right, so, now so people get these kind of burn marks because when they do sajda, they will, like, let's say they'll, instead of doing, they'll go like, they'll start over here and then they'll start like rubbing across, burning their forehead. Now, this is nothing to do with Islam. Okay, this is ridiculous. It's a misunderstanding. It's a misconception. This is, in fact, let me tell you something. The Salaf, people like Imam Qurtubi, they speak about this. He brings this in his tafsir under things like the verse وَسِيمَاهُمْ فِي وُجُوهِهِمْ. So Allah speaks about there will be people who believe in Allah and His Messenger, and you will see it in their faces. Simahum, that their kind of sign is in their faces. But what this meant was like a kind of radiance, a glow. It meant a sense of commitment. You will see the passion in their eyes. This is what it meant. So what some people understood this to mean is, it meant the burnt forehead. Now, so in the time of the Salaf, they started to do this. So Imam Qurtubi brings a narration from some of the Tabi'een, right, and some of the Sahaba, who, so the Salaf, and I believe there's a particular one, I think it may have been a Tabi'i, so this is somebody who met the companions. He sees someone and they've got this big burnt out mark over there. So they used to refer to it as a rakbatul ba'ir, the kneecap of a camel. So he says to him that, what's this kneecap, camel's kneecap, doing? Lucky they never used another term, camel. But this camel kneecap, they said, what's this camel kneecap doing on your forehead? And right, so the person said, this is because of my sajdas, my prostrations. So this guy says to him, Wallahi, I have reached 80 years of age. This is the Tabi'i saying to him, I've become 80 years old. Yeah. Like, I've met many great people before you. Like, as in, from the Sahaba. None of them had this in their foreheads, he says. And he says to this person, he says, فَلَا أَدْرِي أَثَقُلَتِ الرُّؤُوسِ أَمْ خَشْنَةِ الْأَرْضِ. He says, the Lord knows. Have the heads just got heavier? Or has the earth become harsher? Because those who went before you were so much more powerful, so much more, so much more achieving in this deen. and they never had anything like this. So yeah, so these things, people avoid kind of burning your foreheads, and it's not a sign of piety. Cool. Let's get back to what I was going to say. Right, so I'd been asked a question about the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam allegedly wanting to commit suicide, and a report which was shared by certain people. It was also shared by Abdullah Gondal. Now, I think it's an extract from Tabari, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he first encounters revelation, he has like a panic attack, like he's this anxiety kind of attack, and he's and he goes, he kind of like, he's very shaken by the whole process, and he goes to, in this narration, and he goes to Khadija, and he says to her that, embrace me, embrace me. And that part is a very well known part, but he says in this narration that I am either a poet, I'm either a poet or a madman. Now, this is, I think, in some of the narrations of Tabari. So, some people had brought this. I think Abdullah Gondal, I didn't read his full post, but I think this criticism was that, is this kind of like insulting? Is the Prophet himself acknowledging that he is a madman? Look, firstly, I want to say that this is not an authentic transmission, okay, just to clear this up. But let's go with, even if this were, even if something like this did happen, and there is the thing on the suicide as well. The Prophet wanted to end his life. There's a hadith in Bukhari that he would go and wanted to throw himself, and that is deemed blasphemous. And once again, it's a problem with Sahih Bukhari. But let's today roll with those, because those hadith are not acceptable. But let's roll with today them being acceptable. Let's just say they are. Let's roll with this. Right, so this thing, it isn't something that, a person is saying, they're not doing a medical diagnosis. They're not saying like, here's my mental health check. This is that, look, we have an understanding that was, first of all, it's very loosely transmitted, because there were no real, like at the time the Prophet is telling his wife. And remember, in early Islam, there were no Muslims. So this is years and years and years later. People are hearing from someone, and they're rewording things, and they're paraphrasing, and they're doing things. But anyway, let's go with it. This is a person, this is an explanation that the Prophet, when he's encountered revelation, he's shaken by the whole process. And it doesn't make sense to him that what is going on. And as I explained earlier on today, a sha'ir, a poet, they didn't used to think of poets the way we think of poets, as in somebody who just says poetry like Ghalib or Mir, or just like romanticizes, or no, to them poets were like soothsayers. They were like shamans. They were people that used to make things rhyme and say these, but they would enter into a kind of trance. And that's what they would generally used to call sha'irs. And then from that trance-like shaman comes the regular kind of sha'ir as well. He emerges from that, who's just a regular poet. And hence the word sha'ir in Arabic comes from the root emotion, like your awareness. Because he's somebody who's he's gaining this awareness. He's entering a new kind of stage of awareness, a trance, if you like, and this is the sha'ir. So right now, my point is, now this experience, when the Prophet experiences this revelation, it doesn't, like he's shaking, it doesn't make sense to him. What's going on? Why is this? Am I seeing things? Did I imagine that? Have I become like this person in a trance? Have I lost my mind? Have I become, have I lost my mind? surely this couldn't have happened, what I just thought happened. These are very, I'm just saying, these are very normal human reactions to things, okay? They're not something, it's not a health check report. You know, in fact, the thing about being, the thing about being insane, being mental, is that one does not know that they are mental. Hence the whole book, Catch-22, the whole, where the whole phrase of Catch-22 comes, where he's a soldier and he's trying to get out of the war and he tries to declare himself mental, but it's a Catch-22 because of the whole thing. Because if you can, if you know, like, you can't be, like, to be mental truly, you can't know that you're mental. But the point is that, look, this isn't a kind of, hey, this is a holistic kind of diagnosis and prognosis. This is a reaction. What we're saying is, some people have allegedly said that the Prophet, this was a reaction, that he said that, whatever, am I entering this kind, have I become this person that enters into trances? Have I, did I just hallucinate? Did I see that? Was that real? Am I losing my mind? What's going on? And even personally, I would say, even if, I know most scholars, they don't accept the suicide hadith as authentic, which once again adds to the whole Bukhari gate thing. But that said, even if you did accept it, like even if you roll with it, I think in it shows an incredible human connection, one that many people can relate to. That when the Prophet, because the story is that, when the Prophet received revelation, for a substantial period of time there was no more revelation, and he began to really think that, did I imagine this? What was going on? And this anxious restlessness became so turbulent that, according to that narration, the Prophet contemplated ending it all, let's say. Now firstly, that narration is not acceptable. But even if we did go with it, is this not just a resonance, a connection with regular human beings who, when they undergo such turmoil, such kind of turbulence at a psychological, at an emotional level, that they can't handle, that they feel that, maybe what's going on? And people sometimes, they have this thing that, let's just throw the towel in, let's give up. But that's not the way. If this be true, now most people have not accepted the narration as true, but I'm just saying, if anything, it just had that human element to show that people can relate to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that he too could relate to them. I think, personally, I don't think that it is authentic, but that said, even if you went with it, to me it's not a kind of like a hit. If anything, it only adds to the amazing human character of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Somebody who understood internal turmoil, who understood that, that there's points in life where a person could be driven to almost despair. And hence revelation reinforcing the message that do not despair. So if anything, I see this still, even if you roll with it, even if you go with it, I still see it as a, as something with a meaningful lesson. I don't see it as a weakness. I don't see it as something, I don't see it as something that detracts from the messenger of God, Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So that's my thing. So I wanted to respond to that there. And look, we've got to remember as well, if you take this as a kind of rule, that look, in early Islam, there weren't many people around to later tell the stories. There weren't many Muslims. So all the stories about early Islam are definitely being passed through a couple of people. Definitely. And you see, this is why it's always important to understand how memory works, how transmission works. And, you know, you've got, and I've been through this before, you've got amazing studies in psychology. Bartlett's, you know, his Story of the Ghosts, for example, is an amazing research study which shows that people will always appropriate. So in that study, he mentions how, I mean, this was a study that, you know, from the last century when he I believe it was in Cambridge. He did this with people who were very, you know, they were very talented, skilled. He got them to read a story. It's only a brief story. It's like, I think, half a page long or something. It's just a description of some people going hunting. But they are, I think, Native Americans that are going hunting. But he got a bunch of participants who were from England, English, Cambridge University students to go over this. Then they had time to remember it. And then I think the next day, he gave them like 24 hours or something. This is Bartlett and his study within psychology. Now, on memory. And then he gave them, the next day, he gave them he allowed them to go over the story again. They did. And then he asked them to kind of put it away, and they had to sum it up they had to re-narrate it, basically, in their own words. And it's interesting that even though the majority of them did, you know, get the gist of the story, but the story is quite vague. It's not quite, like, it has a vagueness to it. Now, what's interesting is the vast majority of them substituted words that they assumed. So, for example, because they go out on this canoe, now, I don't think it's called, I think it's called something else, but they called it a canoe because they weren't familiar with the other kind of boat. And the person went hunting, the kind of people in the story went hunting seals. But because they weren't familiar with that, they transmitted it as they went fishing. And this is the overall majority. And it's interesting how, you see, memory is a constructive agent. It's not something passive. As you recall things, you recall them with your frame of mind, your understanding of the world. So that's why when people transmitted things afterwards, you have to take this into consideration. So I hope that helps. Remember this always, that early Islam, there weren't people to narrate what happened. This is going through a number of people. Okay. Cool, guys. I hope that helps. Let's move on. What else is going on, people? What else is going on? Oh, right. There's a K-pop star. K-pop. I'm not quite sure what K-pop is. I think it's a Korean. I think it's just hip-hop and different kind of a genre of music. But there's a K-pop star who converted to Islam. His name is J. Kim. And I'd been sent the thing about him. So I found it very interesting, amazing. He has a huge following. He's from South Korea. And he's already very popular on YouTube. And he embraced Islam. And I think for a while he'd been quite Islam friendly and looking into Islam and things like this. And I welcome his having arrived at the faith, really, and this as a new journey in and of itself. I did watch this interview, which I found very fascinating. There's an interview of his on YouTube where he interviews his grandfather, and it's really interesting because his grandfather was somebody from, you know, he's got memories from I think maybe the World War II and things like this, and he speaks about, he asks him questions like, what do you think about Islam, what do you think about Muslims, and his grandfather is very fond of the Turks, actually, because he says that Korea, when it was in its first war, when it was going to be compromised, that it was the Turks that apparently came in and helped them, and many of them sacrificed their lives to save Korea, to save South Korea. And he feels that, you know, he's always indebted to them. And it's interesting, he has this dialogue with his grandfather about, so what do you think about Islam, and what do you think about, do you think it's a violent religion, do you feel it's... And his grandfather, very wise, just says, look, no religion is really inherently violent. It's people. And I just love the conversation that they had. And his grandfather was very inspired by Confucius and the whole teachings. And they speak about the parallels between Islam and Confucianism. And he asks him that, look, if I was to embrace Islam, how would you feel? And he says, well, you know, if it's a choice that you would make, then, you know, if it makes you a better person, then I think that's good. And amazing, really. You know, sometimes the generational gap and that conversation, I think we need more of it, honestly. I think we need more of it. And I don't mean me having a conversation with a kid. Kid goes, hey, Grandpa. Right, so I can't remember who I was speaking to the other day on some message, and somebody said, all right, Granddad. And I thought, what? Granddad? I must be getting old. Yeah. Honestly, people, huh? People. The strangest things you've had said to you. You know, as a compliment, what are the strangest things you've had said to you? That's the strangest. I mean, there's many compliments that obviously you'd always love. It never, you're like, no, carry on. No, stop it, no, carry on. No, so, but there's, you know, some of the weirdest compliments I've had that I've been like, huh? I think one of the strangest ones that sticks out in my mind is I had this girl once say, and she, I don't know, but didn't seem young. Seemed like, I mean, doesn't seem, I mean, young, but not that young. Seemed like, I don't know, I'm assuming maybe 20, maybe even if you said in her late teens, let's just say, seemed like that kind of age. Said once, you know, like, I think you're real cool. I wish you were my dad. I was like, huh? यार ये कैसी तारीफ हो रही है यार. Yeah, like, acha. And no, not in that, not, she didn't spell it as daddy. She said, Dad, you haramis. I know you sickos who watch this. Right, so, but that's probably one of the strangest compliments that I read, and I was like, I'm just in a state of cognitive dissonance. Right, so what else is going on? What else is going on, people? Let's see, are there any other... Let's take some questions that you've put on the thing. Somebody asked a question about the mustache, and if you don't trim your mustache, will God send you to hell for not trimming your mustache? That's gotta be one of the worst. I mean, if you end up in hell for not trimming your mustache, you know what? You deserve to be there. Because that's gotta be one of the worst. It's like, what did you do? You know, I lived my life wildly. I was crazy. I did this. I did that. I was, you know, I was doing I was following my desires to the nth degree, and I was immersing myself in indulging. And what were you up to? Oh, I was this sicko, and I was up to this, and what were you? Oh, I was a, I did genocide, and what are you in hell for? No, I used to say I'm Pharaoh. I used to consider myself God and make people worship me and enslave them, and what are you in hell for? Oh, I didn't trim my mustache. All of a sudden, all of hell just comes to a standstill. It's like... And there you've got Nietzsche with his big mustache. Nietzsche's like, so you mean the game was rigged against me anyway? You mean even if I believed, I was still going to end up here? That's got to be one sad state. I just feel sorry. That person, yeah, I just, it just didn't trim my mustache. Well, no, so, look, by holding these kind of beliefs, what you do is you ridicule God. Because you're kind of saying, like if you break it down, what you're saying is that I can understand this, I know it sounds nonsensical, I know this, oh, but God's saying it. Like, oh, but I can get it, but God can't. Which is ridiculous, which is an insult to God. So, I would say, look, don't worry about it, man. You're not going to go to hell over your mustache. God, if you do, then you're probably the entertainment for the other dwellers of hell. They're like, okay, can we get one guy in here who gets pranked? and it's you. They're sitting with this big mustache next to Stalin and next to Nietzsche. Right, so what about ladies with tash? Oh, they're going to be in the pits of hell, the bottom pit. So, every time a person, whoever tried to be intimate with them, he felt like he'd been intimate with Charles Bronson from the... And some women, women, piece of advice, if there does happen to be a mustache, get rid of it. Laser the damn thing, nuke the damn thing, electrolysis, whatever it is, get rid of it. Right? Don't bleach it. Because then it's, because the guy's going to be like, oh, I had a problem with a girl having a mustache, but hey, if it's a blonde mustache, if it's Hulk Hogan, then, hey, what you gonna do? If it's Hulk Hogan, you're like, well, I always was a fan of Hulk Hogan. Right, so, well, there you go, people, that's that. No offense, no offense. Look, on the bright side, look, I've got a mustache as well. No offense there. Somebody's asking, what about tongue piercing? Look, all kinds of piercing are generally permissible, so long, because the rule in Islam is that everything is permissible unless proven otherwise. Now, there are certain things that are, the purpose of them is to disfigure. And because some people want to be disfigured, so it can be scary, or it can be some kind of ritual practice. People, they have these kind of things drilled in from here to here, and they do all these, you have some kind of practices in certain societies in the world. I don't know if you can call them societies. Maybe they're almost like primitive kind of primitive-like societies. So they will do these kind of face piercings with these rods that go through one side to the other and stuff like this. And I do feel that that is forbidden, because that is, the purpose of it is to usually either it's kind of religious and symbolic like that, or it's to look scary, and the whole thing is it's a kind of disfigurement that you're seeking. General beauty accessories like piercing your ear, piercing your eyebrow, piercing your nose, piercing for women. I'm speaking about. I cannot stand men that have a nose piercing. To me, that is something strictly feminine, right? So, but I mean, generally, like let's say piercing the lip or piercing, I don't know, the tongue or things like this. They're not. These things are not haram. I'm not saying they're necessarily good or bad. They're your own call. You know, some people may like it, some people may not. But it's not. You know, they're not haram. Okay. To say something is haram, the bar is quite high. You have to prove it overwhelmingly. You know, it's like this guy messaged me, I then blocked him. I thought I had to kind of like slap myself in the face that why am I engaging this fool? Right, so, but before I blocked him, I'd responded, you see, so he messaged me, going off all preachy, like, oh, you know, you've got an earring on, and what the hell, and, you know, this is acting like women, and haram, haram, that's one haram, that one earring, oh, no, now can't tell, man, woman, who takes the earring off, oh, man, puts the earring on, oh, woman. It's like, relax, dude. You know, you don't want to mistake me as a woman. It's like, how could you possibly mistake me as a woman? I mean, so, anyway, all right, now, so the guy, so I said to him, look, I tell you what, why don't you just, why don't you just watch my video? I've got a detailed video. It's about half an hour long. It's on YouTube on why earrings are not haram for men. Like, watch it. So he says, I've watched it. I said, look, watch it again, because you must have... He says, oh, but there's clear hadith. Men are not allowed to, you know, dress like women, and women not allowed to blah, 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 blah. I said to him, look, why don't you watch it? Because you've definitely missed what I've said. He said, oh, he comes back and he says, I've watched it 3 times, which I doubt, unless he's, you know, obviously suffering from learning disabilities, and then perhaps, perhaps in that case he has watched it 3 times, but it's all the same. Right, so he says, oh, and you know, so I says to him, look, I mention in there that there is no such thing as a Sahih Hadith to condemn earrings. I also explain, I go through the history of how far back it's been documented that men wore earrings in different civilizations, different societies, the Sassanids, the other empires, pirates, how it's never been an exclusive sign of femininity. It's men and women. Some societies, men wore it more, some equally, some less. I mention in there, I go through the thing of the actual statues that are now a few thousand years old, that you can see where the men are depicted with earrings. The soldiers in most of these paintings as well were depicted with earrings. And I mention all of this, and I mention through the Islamic era how the hadith about piercing the ear from Ibn Abbas, I mention that how the Prophet's grandsons, Hassan and Hussein radiallahu anhuma, both wore earrings. I mention how many of the Salaf, how Imam Malik wore an earring, how Sufyan ibn Uyayna wore an earring, even whilst they used to study hadith with great scholars like Amr ibn Dinar and so on. So I mention all of this. So how can a person watch this and still not I mean, I get that you don't have to agree with it. You can watch it and say, look, I disagree. But to say that, oh, but you haven't... So the person came back and said, oh, there's a hadith, you know... And I've mentioned there's no such hadith. So then I just blocked him. Which I should have done in the beginning, to be fair. But So these things are not, so piercing in and of itself is not haram. Right, okay, so somebody said about, oh, why don't I just declare haram things to be haram? Because that, my friend, is a supposition. You see, you're assuming that it is haram. You must prove it to be haram. And the bar is up there. To prove haram means you're saying that God is saying that this person deserves to be punished by hell for this action, which is a very high standard if you ask me. So you're going to have to prove it, and you won't be able to. Guys, let's do a quick rapid round session, and then I can see somebody's asked about Tajweed. Layla Bandari, right, her sons go and recite Tajweed, but the Qari Saab is too kind of pernickety and too OCD about certain things. You don't, from an Islamic perspective, you don't need to stress these things. You don't need to worry about them. Like, the Qurra, the Qaris are just OCD. So long as you correct your pronunciation, presumably from the name, Layla, you're, I'm assuming Bandari, you're an Arab. Oh, she says, as an Arabic speaker. So I'm sure your Arabic pronunciation should be fine anyway. They can polish it up, and that's fine. Next. Melissa Ypsilon says, Salam, Mufti, could you please talk about Sufism a little bit and how you see them different from other schools in their understanding of the concept of the ruh? Too happy to listen to your thoughts. You see, I was thinking about this the other day, that Sufism, although now I think it too is just institutionalized, but I do feel that it was onto something. It figured out quite early on this whole thing of the greater message and how the importance of connection and consciousness, which I feel is synonymous with ruh, and how that they were, this understanding of how God is addressing people and all these things. I think the Sufis, some of the Sufis were onto something. They, like people like Ibn Arabi, Mahdi ibn Arabi. I do, the more I age, the more I become fond of him and appreciate his. And it's ironic because 10 years ago I thought, astaghfirullah, I thought he was a fool. I would have thought he was stupid for saying some of the stuff he said. But it just goes to show how your own understanding develops with age. And you look back and you think, bloody hell, this guy, he really did have some amazing depth to his perception, considering, it's over 100 years ago. Today we're looking at these things because of the voice of reason, because of quantum physics, and these people were onto this, and this holistic, this embracing everybody, this kind of, that none need to despair from the message of God, that it will encompass all of his creatures, that you don't need to have this God is out there to punish you outlook. And he was onto this so much before so many people. And it's only something I'm beginning to appreciate now, So I think the Sufis, definitely people like Hallaj, and when they said, this thing about God, that are we not just a part of God? With what he was trying to say, it wasn't the shell aspect. Like, he didn't mean that, oh, this hand of mine is God. But I think they were ahead of their times. I think they were onto something. A greater understanding. You see, the problem with this understanding is I think it could be wrongly dubbed as an elitist understanding, because I don't think most people it would be for them. But I think it would be for certain people who are seeking that quest with God. And so I am definitely, appreciative of these people. I do think today most of Sufism is just like the rest of religion. It's institutionalized. It's not like these people like Mahdi ibn Arabi and Hallaj or these people. I think today most of Sufism is just about the order and, you know, the sheikh and giving bay'ah and reading dhikrs and, you know, and there's a lot of sectarianism, strong sectarianism, hating on each other and all this kind of stuff. So, but I think in the past, some of them were onto something very deep. Abu Diba says, Assalamu alaikum bhai, share your thoughts about Imran Khan's speech in UN. I already did that. Right, Arbaz had asked me, Arbaz Qureshi sent me a long list from India of questions which were really fascinating. And you know what, Arbaz, I will go through them next week, inshallah. Okay, they because they're too detailed for a quick rapid round question. Abdul Salam Kilpinen says, can you comment on the teachings of Ibn Tumert? The Mahdi ibn Tumert was the kind of inspiration behind the Muwahhidun movement, which became a dynasty, an empire, and took over from the Murabitun. Was he Zahiri? He was kind of Zahiri, although he was Ash'ari in thought, strictly Ash'ari in thought, but he was kind of literalist in certain ways, and he had a lot of the fiqh books burnt, and he himself never got to see his empire rise, by the way. It was, what's his name? Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali al-Qumi, who really took it forward. And it's amazing because he says to Abdul Mu'min ibn Ali that, you know, one day, who comes to him, who's also a Berber, and he says to him that this Mahdi, despite failing on so many attempts, he says to this guy, that to Abdul Mu'min, you know, I see greatness being achieved at your hands, and I see great kingdoms collapsing before you. It's amazing how words can mobilize the hearts and minds. His words fueled the passion within Abdul Mu'min, who after the death of Mahdi went on to take over. I mean, he at his hands collapsed the capital of the Murabitin, which was Marrakesh, and he took it over, and his empire became one of the most powerful empires throughout Muslim history. In its time, at its zenith, it was ruling over a third of Africa and the Iberian Peninsula, Spain, Portugal, the Palmyric Islands, parts of maybe Sicily, things like, I mean, it was a powerful dynasty in its strength. Obviously, like all dynasties, it waxed and waned, but it was incredibly powerful. And in his at its zenith, when he'd taken it over, one of the things, you know, the kind of the the command, the arrogance, one may say, that he had, almost not to say in a negative way, but the kind of confidence he had, is that he had the kind of walls of Marrakesh demolished. I mean, some of them were damaged anyway, because when they took over Marrakesh, but he had the rest of them also razed to the ground. And they asked him, what are you doing? The city is naked and vulnerable. You know, we could be attacked. And they said that, you know, where's our, you know, siwaruna, that these fences, not fences, but these walls. And he said that, siwaruna siyufuna. Allah. He said, our walls, our defense are our swords. He said, whoever wants us, come and get us. Wah, confidence. The guy had confidence. Wallahi. What is it? Tum tir azmao, hum jigar azmane. You know, we will test our liver, you test your arrow. The guy had, he had some strength about him. And he did. He was incredibly powerful. And that is sometimes the power of prophecies and visions. That when people say things sometimes as a vision to someone, it really fuels the recipient. Many people have had these kind of visions, and it really goes on to it's so helpful. You know, it may be sometimes people may mock them or they may ridicule them, but I mean, these kind of intuitive thoughts. I tell you something. There was a time, I share this with you people, and then we'll wrap this up. And I don't feel that this has, but this is a personal kind of story. That many years ago, when I was about 17, I started to study Arabic. And I used to study at home, and I became so engulfed in studying and learning Arabic. I became like kind of obsessed about it because I didn't have much else going on at the time. So I remember I used to work. I'd left college a bit early, and I'd got a job. So I used to work as in an insurance brokerage, and so at the time I would study every morning after Fajr, after Subah. I would study for about 25 minutes, that's all. And I used to make notes of everything, and I was so curious, and if I could get hold of somebody who knew Arabic, because we never had the internet back then like this. And so this is like maybe 1990, what is it, 6 or 7, maybe 97, maybe something like that. Yeah. So at the time, I came across in our local masjid, there was this person, this Maulana, but I never knew he was a Maulana. Okay, he never used to. I'm being judgmental when I say this, because back then, especially, you'd picture, the guy would be, Maulana Saab, and everybody would greet him as Maulana Saab, and no, nobody used to call him Maulana Saab. And his name was Maulana Saeed. His name was Saeed. And we used to just know him as Saeed Saab, and he used to appear a bit scruffy, and sometimes he was a bit dishevelled. I think he'd been through some personal problems, family problems, health problems. Maybe he was moving, maybe he wasn't stable in his accommodation. I don't know too much. We used to just see him in the mosque. And sometimes, he was a bit scruffy, and people never... And this one time, he came out with all this Arabic. And they used to be the Tablighi Jamaat, and he used to do some of the... He never used to do the bayan, but he would be sitting there, and he ended up speaking this Arabic. And I was like, whoa, do you know Arabic? I said to him. And he said, of course, I've done the whole Alim course and Maulana course in Pakistan years ago. He used to speak in Urdu to me. He said, मैंने तो कब से पढ़ा हुआ है Pakistan में, this and that. I studied then, and I did this and I did that. And so I was like, oh, so you know Arabic, you know all these things. And he said, yeah, of course. So I used to, whenever I could find this guy, I would ask him, please, can you stay behind after Salah? And I used to always take my book, Quranic Arabic, which was like about this thick actually. And it was Dr. Surti's book. And I used to be like, oh, look, I've been through this. Can you explain this? I don't understand. I used to always say, acha, iska root verb kya? What's the root verb? I used to always be asking this. And in a weird way, I think in some way it also gave, like, he was happy. It gave him some significance and importance, and not in a nice way. Because you see, when you have something, it's only when you can share it, that when people can appreciate it, that you feel valued. And he felt some kind of value, because people in general did not even know that he was a scholar. And I would, day in, day out, I would try and trap him and say, oh, Maulana Saab, could you, I've got these 10 words, can you explain them to me? And what's the root verb for this? I was going through this verse and I didn't get this verse, and what's this verb? What's this verb? What's the root verb? And I remember one of the, ittaqu, comes from waqa, to protect, but I didn't understand where taqwa, the term, came. I mean, there were so many, but that's just an example. So I would often just sit down with him, and he would talk and he would do things. And at the time, I so desperately wanted to study, but my family circumstances were such that it was literally impossible. Literally impossible. In fact, when I did go to study, it caused there was so much difficulty at that stage, because my family weren't really down with that kind of stuff, and it caused a lot of, there was, without going into it, but it was really difficult. At the time, it seemed impossible that I would have ever been able to study, like systematically. I don't mean on your own, but I mean in a madrasa or do something. And I remember at the time just kind of like just accepting it, saying, okay, fine. But I thought to myself, at least if I can understand the Quran, that's all I want. So I used to go regularly, every time I could get hold, when I come back from work in the evenings, I'd see this Maulana Sahab, sit him down, say, Maulana, wait for me. And then I'd say, can we just sit in the masjid and go over this and go over that? And sometimes I'd ask him, Maulana Sahab, can we go over a short surah of the Quran? Can you explain it to me? And I used to go over so much, and I'd make notes. What's the root verb? So I remember he used to often say to me, okay, don't. He used to say to me, okay, don't interrupt me with root verb, right? So you'd often, whilst he would explain to me, and I asked him on some occasions, can you tell me a poem in Arabic? And he would tell me a poem. Here's a poem. Ya za'ira qabri, la ta'ajab min amri, amsi kuntu makana ghadan takuna mithli. Like, he actually read that poem to me then in 97. And so things like this, I was so wowed, I could not get enough. And because maybe, like I said, it was a time when we weren't bombarded with media and we didn't have many other things to do apart from just hang out, and I was obsessed with this learning. So I remember once he even said to me, you should go to a madrasa. And I said, look, I can't. It's impossible in my condition, but I just want to be able to understand the Quran. And this one evening, I caught him, and we're sitting down and we're going through. I said to him, Maulana Sahab, can we go through a short surah, please? So he was going through one of the surahs with him, just me and him, in the masjid. Just sitting there. It was a small masjid. It was in Handsworth in Birmingham. So he was going through it, and he was saying, this word means this, and this, and I'm like listening. And he just stopped suddenly. And he just looked at me, and he said to me, you know what? He said, you will get to study. And I just kind of smiled, and he said to me, not only that, he said, you will become a scholar, but you will become a great scholar. He said, you'll surpass so many people. Like, you'll be on such a high plateau of learning. So at the time, I just kind of at the time just laughed, like I often do. I said, and he said, no, he said, I'm serious. He said, you will. He said that, he said on a world scale, that people will come to know of you. So I said to him, I wish, Maulana Sahab. And he said to me, but you'll forget me then. He said, you'll be like, who's this Maulana Saeed? Ye kaun hai? Ye Maulana Saeed? He said, bahut unche maqam tak pahunchoge. And Allah will give you great success. So, I just kind of laughed off his words and said, Maulana Sahab, what are you saying? And what's this word? And we kind of just left it there. But I have to say, at the time it didn't occur to me, but in later life, as events unfolded, and I did get to go, miraculously, I got to study and I got to achieve things, and things went from, one stage to another. His words always kind of echoed in my ears. And it's amazing how sometimes some people, maybe you value them, and from their hearts a dua is emitted that reaches the heavens. And destiny as you know it is overwhelmingly rewritten. That maybe everything that, you achieve certain things in life just because somebody made a kind dua for you. Like, you never know these things. So I think that's something, that's a very personal kind of story, which I often think about. And I tried to track down that Maulana Sahab. I couldn't. I once not accidentally, I once bumped into him about a decade ago. No, about a decade ago, yeah. I bumped into him, probably less than a decade, maybe about like 8 years ago or something, 9 years ago, just on a street somewhere, and I approached him, and I did ask. I said, "Assalamu alaikum, Maulana Sahib," but I think he didn't stop for me, and he just briefly stopped and shook my hand, and I said, "Maulana Sahib, it's me, and it's Maulana Saeed, isn't it?" I said that, how are you doing, and this and that, and he was just talking non-stop, like he wasn't making any sense. He was just saying, I think there may be some mental health issues, and he was just saying things, and they didn't really. I said, "How are you doing, Maulana Sahib? I don't know if you remember me from Handsworth and years ago," and he just said, "Acha, aur kaise theek hai, sab theek hai, acha, haan, wo keh raha," and he's just talking away, and he just kind of like pulled his hand out, and and he just walked off. And I tried to say something, and I mean, I did try to track him down, but I don't, it's very few people knew where he is. I hope wherever he is, if he is, that, may Allah grant him good health. But likewise, people, do take your time out. Sometimes you have many hidden gems just around you. Value them. Whether it's in the form of your parents, your peers, your people you can learn from, people you can gain experience from. In these things, perhaps it's rigged in that way that in it, Allah has hidden certain treasures for you. Guys, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Take very good care of yourselves. As always, it's been awesome. Inshallah. Much love. Inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Over and out, folks.